we are back with an interesting FireSide Chat exploring NFTs in the metaverse. That's virtual world, virtual land. We have the panel of speakers, Irina Karagyaur. She is the director, design B2C based out of UK. She is a strategic thinker focused on blockchain technology. She is a Polkadot head ambassador for Western Europe, regional co-chair London of Fiber Foundation. And we have another one, Kyle White. He is an angel investor, Adam Foundation, NFT expert. And he is an experienced venture marketing advisor of over 15 companies, raised over 600 million in funding. So over to you, Kyle.
Hey, thanks for the introduction, and yeah, thanks for having us here. And really, the first speaker, it was very interesting hearing how he was talking about a lot of the due diligence that came with NFT purchases. When we think about some of the benefits of blockchain, a lot of that is the ability to know that what you're buying in an NFT is in a contract that when you send the money to purchase it, it releases to you. So there is that trustless element, but also compliance. So it was very interesting to hear that combination. What were your thoughts, Irina?
Oh, hi, Kyle. Sorry.
Hi, welcome back.
I lost connection on my way.
You left me here by myself at the beginning. I mean, come on.
Well, you have a keynote now.
So let's we'll start with the creative and art piece, since that was a lot of what was talked about in the last panel. And one thing that I really want to touch on that people don't really understand when it comes to NFTs is, we've seen people purchase NFTs that are still based maybe on a Dropbox file or somewhere hosted online on a server. Now, when we're talking about due diligence, to me, it's not important to know who's selling it to me, as long as I can verify that it's on the interplanetary file system and that it's in the contract that's going to release to me when I send my money for the NFT. So when I look into due diligence, it's more of the rarity, who the previous NFT has sold for, and where the actual art or medium is being hosted. And I do prefer the IPFS system.
Well, you see here, it's an interesting topic because only people who are deep in the space and who can actually look into the code and find the traces of where the actual information about ownership is stored can actually make sure that it's a real thing. But it does seem like there is a lot going on in the space in terms of secondary market resales and people just trying to take advantage of all this hype and sell something that's not original. So there is a lot of, the hype around NFTs is kind of a hype of ICOs of 2017. And because there is no clear rules and regulations and not enough information and education, there are all sort of things happening right now in this space. So yeah, it is very, very important to give directions of where to find that ownership, and not only let's say in terms of because a lot of people don't understand that NFT is not just an image, because our perception of the web is that you have an image and that's pretty much it, and then you have the name of the file, whether it's JPEG, any other definition of the file, and then you can also change the name as you wish. So that's a bit our traditional way of looking at things, and until we change the habit into the immutability and understanding that this is actually the way it should be. You have a hash, you cannot change it, and this is your proof and certificate that it's not just an image. There is something more behind the image.
Right, you're even touching on another piece too that I find is difficult with valuing the NFTs, because similar to the ICOs back then where they can fake how much money was sold, a good example is Block One with EOS, where they were essentially recycling money back into their massive ICO. But at the same time, with NFTs, you're seeing creators sell them to themselves to establish this high value, and they're just using a different wallet, and they're maybe losing 2.5% on that first transaction. But that's okay, because they're reselling it for 10, 20, 30 times what it's, what they actually lost on the little transaction fee. So when it comes to creation, I also like that you talked about how it's not just an image. So for example, I talk to a lot of music people because I believe that bringing in collectives and different artistic minds is very important. So one thing I tell them is basically take a song, break it down into almost like a comic book, right? So break it down into steps, but at the same time, turn each one of those steps, each one of those squares into some piece of digital art that then also contains your music, because now you're adding, it's the same way artists, started going back to being able to sell records like I have up here, is because they would add in little nice things on the side that you would want to purchase with them. Like you'd get a limited edition t-shirt or cool hat. I mean, the things people will do for a free hat is unreal. But when it comes to combining that with some kind of digital NFT, that becomes very exciting. Another aspect, and we're talking about how to value an NFT, because one thing with valuations of an NFT, it's not just an image. We've seen that it could also be commercial real estate, and it can also be different types of real world assets represented on the blockchain. So who is coming in and validating basically those prices too? I mean, traditionally buying a house, you could send out an appraiser and do X, Y, and Z. With the blockchain, it's only as good as the data that comes in is the data that goes out. So there's ways to manipulate NFTs by buying your own. I wonder, with real world assets, is there an opportunity here for fraudulent activity because appraisers are an off-chain entity that cannot be trustless at this time?
Well, firstly, I would like to agree with you about the inflations and artists selling their own assets to inflate the price on the market. But that's kind of the thing that happens even in a traditional art world. We have artists like, if you talk about Damien Hirst and all the big 21st century artists, that there is a lot of speculation around art and inflation and bubbles, and it's all built around artists' reputation, and then they can manipulate it the way they want, and investors do the same thing, and then top galleries can do the same thing, and it's a bit sad, because actually the idea of NFTs and blockchain is to give power to the artist to not need to go to these galleries and play with the price, but actually show who you really are and do these airdrops and reach out to as many people as you can so they can buy it from you, make sure that it's original. So it kind of has, more value and also more moral value, rather than somebody goes to the gallery or to the second gallery or, and keeps on going through this chain of intermediaries. But yeah, like I've always been passionate about real estate, NFTs for real estate application. Because it does seem like the best thing you can do with real estate assets in terms of fractional ownership. So I've recently came across a white paper by Unique Network. So they are launching a parachain or a parathread on Polkadot in the next couple of months, and they came up with an idea of fungible, refundable, and non-fungible. So I believe back in 2018, there was a concept of refundable token introduced by Banker, meaning that you could own a fraction of the painting or of the real estate. So the biggest challenge in the real estate world is how you want, if you want to attract liquidity, you maybe want to sell a very expensive asset or very, let's say, a historical building that doesn't really, that is very difficult to sell to a unique owner because it requires so much maintenance that maybe you'd rather sell it to several owners. And then somebody will actually take care of the actual maintenance, but then there will be other people holding, investing in a different way, or will be putting that their part on an exchange and selling it. So there will be a flow of liquidity going into this real estate piece. So there are really many different ways in which I see the future of real estate and NFTs. But at the moment, so recent news of the house, New York house, so by Paul Rudolph, going on sale as an NFT, didn't seem to be, and again, an actual sale on a blockchain. It did look like a new marketplace. So there's a historical house built in 1958, modernist house in America. It has value and needs a lot of maintenance, and they couldn't find an actual buyer because maintenance, and you would imagine that you spend an X amount of money on buying a property, but then you have to maintain it. So it wasn't an easy building to sell. So they decided to put it out as an NFT, which attracted a lot of media attention because it's a new space. There is a lot of journalists are hungry for information about NFTs. But it did seem to me that it was just sold for, it was just a normal real estate transaction. So they bought a token, but they didn't get intellectual rights or photography rights. They just bought like normal real estate in a sort of digitalized manner. So what do you think about selling properties, and how, in your view, should it look like?
So you might not like a lot of my answers that I'm about to come with, but you kind of outline a major issue here, because this property could not sell on the open market by itself. Okay, so this owner had to tokenize it to get media attention to be able to sell this property. So we're talking about bad data in, bad data out. The properties that we're seeing tokenized aren't the best properties in the world. And let's look at a traditional commercial real estate deal. Those are happening off market. Those are happening before they ever go to Crexi or go to LoopNet. If you find a property on LoopNet, you've probably missed out. It's probably not the best property. So how can we assume that people buying a tokenized piece of this property that might not be that good have the knowledge and skills readily available to actually assess what this property is worth? To me, that just leaves us open more to fraud and all these risks of scams. It doesn't make the process better. And we're not even talking about, so let's say this property tokenizes itself into 10, 20 different assets. Say 2 of those people lose their keys. Now what happens to that property? Can that property now never sell because 2 people lost their keys? Because you have to remember, for the whole property, let's say you want to sell everything all as one to offload it, like in a commercial real estate deal, how that would happen. You'd have to be able to offload it in one function. If you're missing a piece, then that property can never be whole. I think there's ways to fix this. I think it's around syndication more than it is around tokenization. Because when you have syndication, then you can rely still on the power of a group. Because we want everything to be as DAO friendly as possible. So you're talking about all these people who bring different value to the property investing in it. One person potentially doing maintenance, one person doing X, Y, or Z. So if you put everything into, let's look at it as a vehicle. So basically how this marketplace that I just finished the white paper for it, what it would do is it puts everything into a vehicle. So this vehicle itself has DAO voting capabilities. So by owning a piece of this NFT or investing into a piece of this NFT vehicle, you are now basically with the crowd. So if 2 people lose their keys, it's no big deal. You're still able to sell this property, to utilize this property, to still show ownership of this property. Because I mean, there's a sad reality with commercial real estate. You don't have enough ownership, people left with their keys, who's collecting the profits? Because that's what commercial real estate is supposed to do, is generate profits. We also have to look at, again, the value of the data coming in and the value of the data then being put on the blockchain. So when you put things in a vehicle, you're able to put different incentives for people to actually appraise something in a normal way. Because right now I couldn't give you a tokenized asset for free because that's a security in the eyes of the United States. So I'd go to jail. But if we have a structure set up in a vehicle where a person might get a portion of profits X, Y, or Z in a healthy DAO fashion that could be voted on, increased, reduced, follow the market, it might be a little healthier for cryptocurrency, because we're also seeing with tokenized assets is liquidity's low. So how are you able to, even though I can sell my asset, if there's no buyer, it's no good. And when it comes to property in the United States, you can only have 100 owners. And if one of those owners, the bank doesn't like it, they could call your loan. So what happens if you go 101 owners? You're in trouble. What happens if the bank doesn't like one of the people that invested into it? You're in trouble. And that hurts everybody then who invested into that tokenized asset.
I quite like the idea of the syndicates and DAO, and this is actually something that we've been discussing during our last panel in London with major real estate players, because they quite like the idea of tokenization as a concept, as a new way of attracting liquidity. However, it does seem like the process is still way too complicated from the legal point of view. And actually, if you look at the current even ways that STOs work, it's all about digitizing properties. It's not really changing anything fundamentally. So you need to still do all the paperwork off-chain, do the due diligences, have legal sorted out, have land issues sorted out, and then when all that is clear and transparent, you can put it on-chain. But then once that happens, you can actually have a DAO. And I think it's probably a good idea to have a DAO within one single company for a start. So say a real estate company creates a DAO, attracts their investors, attracts property managers, tenants, or property owners. So property owners and tenants are actually included in the process, because what we've seen in the UK is a problem with ESG in this famous Greenhill Tower case, when things were not properly reported. So through NFTs, we can actually do small pieces and treat the data and certifications separately, and then take these decisions of which is the right data, which is the right action, what is the participation of tenants, how can tenants increase the value of their property through their participation in maintenance, or reporting. Like ESG has been a great like major topic for the past couple of years, what you can do with an environment, and that actually value of buildings will be going up if you take care of the ESG part of the construction. So that's a premium that people will be willing to pay for to make sure that their building is compliant. And NFTs, it's a resource. So to make certifications, to make them transparent, to be able to see who are the owners when the certificate has been made, has been changed, et cetera, et cetera. It's actually just a part of the digital, but kind of takes away the complication of STOs and takes it out of the hands of accredited investors. Because if you're dealing with NFTs, you can actually give it out as a different tool. So you don't have to own millions to be able to buy a certificate in your own property that maybe you rent to get bonuses on your good behavior as a tenant or as an owner. Or there will be many different ways to play with this data in the pool, inside of the DAO, and the possibility to take decisions as a community, which reminds me a little bit of the way we used to manage properties in Soviet Union, and it was not like communities manage kind of syndications where there's a company run by the property owners, the building owners, flat owners, tenants, that take decisions on how they want to maintain the building, and through this decision, they actually increase the value of the building. But
that's very interesting, and you're hitting on the right things, because what you talked about is because of the security issue with the property, even if an NFT is backed by a property, the DAO isn't necessarily able to take ownership of that directly, right? They have to do it indirectly through a debt note, because a debt note has the unlimited shareholder limitation. You could run it as a Reg S internationally. So by being able to run it as a Reg S, you kind of are, being able to increase the amount of people that could participate in specifically the United States real estate world. And if you do invest in a debt note, that means if you're from China, you would pay taxes in China. So the Chinese government isn't against net debt notes because you're paying taxes to them at the end of the day. And we're still touching on this really important piece. And you started saying, how do you incentivize the sellers and the building owners? Because that's the thing. If I can go right now, sell my $100 million property at face value by just calling up my realtor, doing it off market, why would I tokenize? Because if my property is valuable enough, I'm going to sell it extremely quickly, and I'm not going to be hurting for buyers. So what you have to do is incentivize those people at that step, right? So one of the companies I invested in heavily, what they do is they actually say, hey, sell us all your equity. We're going to keep the bank in place. Sell us all your equity in it, and we'll still incentivize you by giving you a percentage of the profit share going forward. So that's how you attract the best of the best properties, by being able to say, hey, do what you're normally going to do, sell it right to us. We're going to cut you one check. Don't worry about tokenizing it, spending all that time, money, effort. We'll do it. So what we do is we'll take that property, buy it. We want to put it on the blockchain, go to Securitize, go to any of those players who just simply tokenize an asset, and we're putting it on the blockchain. So that's how we can start to attract good properties onto the blockchain. Now, how do you get the money to invest? So that's where you start getting into this decentralized VC that we're talking about. We're talking about debt notes. So you can offer them that debt note into the syndication economy and use those funds to go invest in the property, right?
Yeah, that sounds very interesting. But depending on the country, I guess there would be a debate whether to play with debt or equity. Because I know that Europe is more on the equity side. UK is always more on the supporting equity side. So there is, again, if we're talking about international transactions and the possibility to sell a property in the United States to the Chinese investor, there would still be a lot of issues, no matter how you put it, an NFT or anything else.
We're scratching it here. So you're bringing up a great point. There's different types of investors. So a more traditional investor like that would rather have a piece of the entire pool. They don't want to spend time going and analyzing one property at a time. That is difficult to do. They want to look at a NAV, look at the past performance of the NAV, and be able to guess the future performance of that NAV. That's why REITs are so popular. So you set up, it's a multiple token system. You set up one with the debt note for the people who want to syndicate the funds in and keep all the liquidity going. Those are more of those average traders like me and you. But when these institutions and these 401ks and these hedge funds, what they want to invest in is the group of all those properties and be able to analyze this NAV and what they think it's going to do. It's more like a REIT. So if we can bring DeFi and REITs together, that's kind of the mesh where everyone can succeed. Because you look at really everyone from small knowledge investors to large knowledge investors like REITs, because they perform well. Because that's kind of the great thing about REITs is when one property is doing great, another property might be going through a process where it needs money put in to become a value add, so then it can be great. And then it kind of creates this growth and growth and growth, which is healthy for a DAO. And that's healthy for a property instead of having to do the due diligence on each single property, because I don't have the resources for that. I mean, I don't know if you do. I don't know your situation, but maybe you're able to have a team analyzing these properties, but I'm not able to.
Well, it's a great point also why we should use blockchain for properties, because you mentioned investors being interested in seeing the past and predicting the future. So if you have, it does seem more attractive for me if I'm an investor to invest in something that I know its performance before, and I have all the records on the blockchain and it's all transparent to me, rather than I'll invest my money in a property that I have no idea and no history records and no clue what's been refurbished, what kind of issues have been there, what kind of data. So again, we're coming back kind of to the point of data being an important factor in the value of the property, just in general in the market. Because you would obviously blockchain. Someone just made a comment here of 5,000 ether for an NFT on Zayst. So not everybody can afford this kind of prices that are out there right now. Even what we see in the art world is like 100,000, 66 million Christie's. So we will see more of high net worth individuals doing the first steps in the space, and more institutional investors, because they have the assets, they have the liquidity, and most importantly, I think they know how to invest the money, as opposed to even like people who deal with small to medium-sized transactions and real estate properties. They would just simply not know how to correctly predict their profitable investments, the right way to tokenize the property, because there are so many ways.
So yeah, to me, that's what our biggest thing to solve is. So when I invest in companies, when I'm putting my money, my time, my efforts behind a company, it's to make it so literally someone with zero knowledge. I'm not going to expect someone to go out and analyze all these NFTs. They don't necessarily have the knowledge to. So I know we're running out of time. Here's a challenge I kind of want to give everybody in this group, and it's a challenge that I, kind of focus on myself too, is we heard in the first call all the risks with people using NFTs for money laundering, using X, Y, and Z for money laundering. Now we're hearing here basically all the struggles with being able to see the data that comes in. What we need to work on as an industry is being able to set up a scenario where people are able to win if they're a seller and win if they're a buyer. Because if one of those two parties loses, that's how a bubble happens. That's how people get burned so much that you lose all of your investors. That's how these people who spent these tons of money on these NFT packs from these tops providers are going to be super sad when they see that, okay, if I sell right now, it's 3x. I'm going to wait because I think it might go up. If the bubble pops, all those people are hurt, and we might lose them in cryptocurrency forever. So we need to really focus on making sure that buyers and sellers can both win in an NFT marketplace.
Yeah, I agree with that, because the idea is to make things easier, not more difficult, transparent and accessible, and not scare people out of the space. So then they have bad experience, and then they say, okay, this your whole blockchain thing is just, it's just not working. It's not for me. Which actually quite DeFi is a great tool for mortgages, for microloans, flash loans, as it's called. And it's really accessible to the majority of the population. And I'm sure that the more we'll see UX and UI improving and more applications, potentially maybe PropTech will end up jumping into the space and actually doing PropTech applications for micro mortgages or certification. So it has to start small somewhere, because now I know a lot of companies who run into the space for chasing the opportunity to tokenize big properties, and knowing this, big cases when there was 25 million property tokenized, et cetera, et cetera. But I think the ways to do it step by step, small things at the time. So the industry can make sure, professionals in the industry and in legal can make sure that it can be done in a legitimate way, in a clear and transparent way, in accordance to law, and the law will change eventually. There are already many conversations by the, and articles published by SEC that are saying, okay, maybe we should take case by case and adjust and allow more flexibility in the regulations of cryptocurrencies, because right now it's quite tough even for STOs, because whatever you market as a speculation of the token is considered to be you playing with securities. So there are many gray areas still in the regulatory sector. But really, it does seem to me that NFTs in music and art will be, and gaming, most importantly, will be sort of the first engine to put this, to push this in the right direction, also for the property. Because my sort of personal perception is that we're going into a property tokenization in the next 2 years. Next 2 years is when things will be, when the infrastructure of blockchain will be built to the point where we're actually able to do more things in terms of complex regulations, in terms of doing more off-chain work on-chain, actually uploading more documents. There will be more things digitized. So once we have land registry, as I keep on saying this all the time, land registry, once it's on the blockchain, once we have records, once we have access to that information worldwide, we'll be able to pull it out and check that the property that's been on sale actually has the owners that it claims to have, doesn't have like double ownership, double spend problem, etc., etc. So yeah, it's a fascinating space to watch. And there is also another important aspect is that big companies like Christie's are running education courses. There is one right now about NFTs held by Christie's. They did almost a week-long course for NFTs and how to use them. And that's a big part of the entire story. No matter what industry we're talking about, art, music, or architecture, step number one is to educate authors, creators on how they can actually access this technology and benefit from it.
And we need to be those ambassadors, though. So I didn't watch the Christie's thing. I'm kind of nervous, and I might have to go back and check it out to see what they actually told people. I mean, because I'm looking at what Binance released, to all this hype. It's taking 10% from any artist that they support. To me, that's absolutely absurd. But if we have big companies like this that are going to control the narrative, we're in trouble. I mean, this is organic space where we can't let these, probably Christie's is thinking we might have missed out on the Bitcoin bull run. Let's hurry up and get all these people here with the NFTs or something like that. I mean, they all have kind of these agendas that might not be in the best interest of us as a community. And I heard you mention flash loans. So that always makes me so nervous. And there is, and I have invested in multiple companies trying to solve this. And I have one that's very close. But the worst thing about flash loans is people can lose their money when the market goes volatile. And the market in cryptocurrency is extremely volatile. So imagine if you are someone who really, you needed this loan because you're at the desperate point in your life, but it just happened where there's a bear market that happens the next day. Now, potentially you're at nothing. And to me, that's something I can't fathom. And it's something that I will continue to press forward to try to find an answer to through investment and through empowering leaders who think about problems like that.
Yeah, it's a correct observation. I absolutely agree with you about the bear market and the bull market and the volatility. These are all things that are not being taken care of, and we don't actually know if this whole explosion and Bitcoin going to the moon will end in September. Everything crashes, and then what's next? Crypto winter. How would that affect the market? I've seen a couple of projects doing actually digital galleries on the blockchain. So they have that base layer of the blockchain that is completely hidden from artists and from the general public, from buyers. So the purpose of that marketplace is to have it immutable and make sure that these NFT certifications that are given to the people with their artwork just prove the legitimacy and prove that the artist, the date, et cetera, everything that the benefits that blockchain brings. However, from the outside, it looks just like any other normal digital gallery, any other experience you can have buying art with your fiat money. So that could be a way to sort of survive the crypto winter. Because you will have new artists, because you will bring them from different geographies, and they will be digital artists, so they actually master different toolkits, and they're just different to a traditional market, but they will have an opportunity to expose their art, and the buyers will not notice the difference between their normal experience of buying and the blockchain experience, which is,
So
I don't know if it's good or bad.
Yeah, I look at that as a bad thing. I think that that's extremely bad, and it's a sign that NFTs are in a bubble and we're going to pop. Think about all the stock photo websites out there. Anyone can load their photos onto any of those stock websites, but stock photos went from being maybe $10 per stock to being able to buy 1,000 stock photos for $10, or to get a subscription to iStock. So what you're kind of telling me is showing me signs of, remember when these stock photos and all these photographers were trying to sell their art, and all these different marketplaces started popping up, and it actually drove the price further down. So it makes me nervous to hear you say that. I'm nervous now. Thanks for making me nervous. I'm very
Sorry,
nervous.
Kyle. Yeah, someone in the chat is saying that education is a different topic because people generally trust established organizations, and that is true. It's the same thing with finance. People trust banks, and the trust to banks is still there, so they would prefer to go to the bank and not to a DeFi platform to invest their money.
And that's my worry too with creators, is right now it seems to be set up where people are now only buying NFTs from people that they know, from top sports, from a famous artist, from some big name. Those people don't need the money. We're supposed to help starving artists. We may be perpetuating more starving artists. So we have to find a solution that makes it a less risky investment to invest in creators who are doing something maybe for the first time. Because maybe, think about Picasso. He probably wasn't accepted the first time he did art. But because there was NFTs, we killed Picasso. We basically pushed him out of the business. We'd be terrible people. So we really have to find a way to support organic creators and not just the top of the top. I think we're really over on time.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
also.
I'm
thank you.
sorry.
This was very interesting conversation.
Yeah, it was very. Thank you so much for your time. It was wonderful. I love the back and forth.
Yeah, thank you, Carl. Irina, it was a great session, long time, and it was but interesting. I think we have not much questions. Time is up, so we have to go for the next session. So
thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
It's a metaverse, of course. NFT-backed real estate market is picking up. It will take a year, I think, to really come on the platform. So thank you, everyone. Thank you, Kyle. Thank you, Irina. Thank you for coming. Look forward. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.